Hello, my dear friend. Today I'm sharing my story. It's a topic that many people experience. I understand English, but I cannot speak it. This can be such a frustrating situation to be in, especially when you know exactly what's being said, but when it comes to replying, the words just don't come out the way you want them to. You feel stuck, anxious, or maybe even embarrassed. The thoughts in your head sound so clear, but somehow they don't translate into spoken words. For those who understand but can't speak a language fluently, this experience can lead to feelings of insecurity or fear of being judged. You might understand what's going on in a conversation, nod your head, and even think of the perfect response, but then when it's your turn to talk, it's like your mouth just doesn't cooperate. The words you want to say either don't come out at all or they come out wrong and you feel frustrated. This kind of struggle is not uncommon. It can happen because of a lack of practice, fear of making mistakes, or just plain nervousness. In this story, we will walk through the life of a boy who understands English but struggles to speak it. You'll see his challenges, frustrations, and how he eventually works through his difficulties to find his voice. His story is an emotional one, full of relatable moments, small victories, and personal growth. Now let's dive into the story. My name is Sam. You might not know me, but I think you'll understand what I've been going through because maybe you felt this way too. You see, I've always had a knack for understanding English. Since I was little, I loved watching English cartoons, and I could understand almost everything they said. I'd watch movies, listen to songs, and even follow along with stories in English. But there was always a problem. When it came time for me to speak, I just couldn't do it. It wasn't that I didn't know what to say. In my head, the words were all there, lined up like soldiers ready for battle. But once I tried to say them out loud, they scattered like leaves in the wind. I felt like my tongue just wasn't built for English. I remember the first time I felt really embarrassed. It was during a family vacation when I was about 10. My parents and I had gone to a tourist spot where we met some kids from the US. They spoke English so fluently, and I was so excited to talk to them. One of the boys asked me where I was from, and I froze. I knew exactly what he was saying, but when I tried to answer, all I could manage was, uh, uh. My mind was racing, but my mouth refused to cooperate. I could feel my face getting hot as the other kids looked at me, waiting for a response. I wanted to shout, "I know the answer, I just can't say it." But instead, I stayed silent, embarrassed. From that day on, I started to feel nervous anytime someone spoke to me in English. At school, it was the same story. I'd understand everything the teacher said, but when it came time for oral presentations or answering questions, I would clam up. It wasn't like I didn't know the answers, I just couldn't get the words out. I'd sit there, heart racing, hands sweaty, praying that the teacher wouldn't call on me. And if she did, I'd stammer, my voice shaky, and I'd end up saying something so basic that it made me feel dumb. One time, I was in English class, and we had to read out loud. When it was my turn, I felt all eyes on me. My hands trembled as I held the textbook. The words seemed to blur on the page, even though I had already read the text in my head. I knew every single word, but speaking them? That was a whole different battle. "So, Sam, it's your turn," the teacher said, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, took a deep breath, and began. The bee bird flew across the sky, I stammered. I could hear a few kids giggle in the back, and my cheeks burned. My teacher gave me an encouraging smile, but I still felt awful. The words just wouldn't come out smoothly. Why couldn't I speak as well as I understood? Over time, I became really good at avoiding situations where I'd have to speak English. I'd smile and nod when people talked to me, pretending like I didn't need to respond. Or I'd pretend to be busy with something else when someone tried to start a conversation. I'd even skip certain activities just to avoid the embarrassment of speaking in English. It was exhausting, constantly dodging conversations, but it was easier than facing the fear of messing up. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the way I wanted to live. I didn't want to hide forever. I wanted to be able to express myself, to join in conversations, to speak confidently without worrying about stumbling over my words. One day, something happened that changed everything. It was a normal afternoon, and I was at the park sitting on a bench minding my own business. I had my headphones in, listening to music. Suddenly, I saw a boy around my age sitting down next to me. His name was Alex. I didn't know him at first, but he looked like he wanted to talk. "Hey," he said, his voice friendly. I nodded, pulling out my headphones. "You like this song?" he asked, pointing to my phone. I understood the question perfectly. I knew exactly what I wanted to say, something like, "Yeah, it's one of my favorites." But instead, all I could manage was a nervous, yeah. Alex didn't seem to notice my hesitation. "Cool. I love this band. Their lyrics are so deep, don't you think?" I nodded again, my mind racing. Should I say something? Should I try to respond? But what if I messed up? What if I couldn't find the right words? Alex kept talking, and even though I understood everything he said, I barely said a word. But he didn't seem to mind. He just kept talking, telling me about his favorite songs, his hobbies, and his school life. I listened, nodding and smiling, feeling both relieved that he didn't expect much from me and frustrated that I couldn't join in more. After a while, Alex looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "You know, you don't have to be perfect. I make mistakes all the time when I speak English. It's just part of learning." I blinked, surprised. How did he know that I was so worried about messing up? He smiled. "I can tell you understand English really well, but you're scared to speak, right?" I nodded slowly. He had hit the nail on the head. "Well, here's the thing," Alex said, leaning back on the bench. "You'll never get better if you don't try. Yeah, you'll mess up sometimes, but who cares? Everyone does. The important thing is to just keep trying." His words stuck with me. He was right. I had been so focused on not making mistakes that I had forgotten the most important part of learning: practice. If I didn't try, I'd never get better. I'd stay stuck in this silent world, always understanding but never speaking. From that day on, I decided to push myself out of my comfort zone. It wasn't easy at first. The first few times I tried to speak, I still stumbled over my words and I still felt embarrassed. But little by little, I started to get better. I practiced speaking with Alex whenever I saw him at the park. I made an effort to speak up more in class, even if it was just a few words at a time. I watched TV shows and repeated the lines out loud, even if I sounded silly. Slowly but surely, I started to gain confidence. The words didn't come out perfectly, but they came out, and that was what mattered. The more I practiced, the less afraid I became of making mistakes. I realized that no one was judging me as harshly as I had been judging myself. One day, I found myself in a situation that would have terrified me before. I was at a school event, and a teacher asked me to speak in front of the class about a project I had worked on. My heart raced, But instead of panicking, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that it was okay to make mistakes. I stood up, faced the class, and began to speak. My voice was a little shaky at first, but as I went on, I felt more and more confident. When I finished, the teacher smiled at me, and a few of my classmates clapped. I had done it. I had spoken in English in front of the whole class, and it hadn't been perfect, but it had been good enough. And that was more than enough for me. After that day in class, I felt like a different person. Something had shifted in me. It wasn't that I suddenly became a fluent English speaker overnight, but I started to feel more at ease with myself. I had stopped being my own worst critic, and that made all the difference. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect to be understood. My friendship with Alex grew stronger too. He'd always been so laid back about everything, and I found myself learning from him in more ways than just language. He had this way of shrugging off mistakes, like they didn't matter at all. One day, as we sat together at the park, he said something that really stuck with me. You know, Sam, life's like learning a language. You're gonna mess up sometimes, but if you never try, you'll never know how far you can go. I nodded, thinking about all the times I'd held myself back because of fear. It wasn't just with speaking English. I had always been hesitant to put myself out there, afraid of failing, afraid of not being good enough. Do you think you've ever missed out on something because you were too scared to try? Alex asked, his eyes on the horizon, as if he were asking himself the same question. Yeah, I admitted quietly. A lot of things, actually. Alex looked at me with a small smile. You're not the only one, man. We all do that sometimes, but it's never too late to try. That conversation was another turning point for me. I started to notice that my struggle with English wasn't just about language, it was about confidence in general. Speaking English was a mirror of my larger fear of stepping out of my comfort zone. One day, Alex invited me to join him at a gathering with some of his friends. They were a mix of English speakers and people learning the language just like me. I was nervous at first, but Alex promised it would be a relaxed hangout, no pressure. Come on, it'll be fun, and it's a good chance for you to practice, he said with a grin. I hesitated. What if I stumbled over my words again? What if they thought I was weird for not speaking fluently? But Alex's easygoing attitude was contagious. He didn't care if I messed up, so why should I? So I agreed. The gathering was at a local cafe. When we walked in, I saw a small group of people laughing and chatting. They waved us over, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. But Alex gave me a reassuring nudge. Just be yourself, he whispered. I sat down, and Alex introduced me to his friends. There was Emma, who was from the UK but had been living in our country for years. Miguel, who had just moved from Spain and was still getting the hang of English. And Anya, a girl from Russia who spoke with a thick accent but never let that stop her from chatting with everyone. I listened to them talk, and I realized something. None of them spoke English perfectly. Emma had a few slang words I didn't understand. Miguel sometimes paused to think of the right word, and Anya, well, she spoke so fast sometimes that it was hard to keep up, but she never hesitated. They were all just communicating in the best way they could, and no one seemed to care about the small mistakes. I found myself relaxing. At one point, Miguel turned to me and asked, "So Sam, do you like football?" I froze for a second, feeling that old fear rising up. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. I liked football, but I didn't know all the fancy terms in English for it. What if I messed up? But then I remembered Alex's words. It's never too late to try. Yeah, I do, I said, my voice a little shaky at first. I, uh, I like watching, but I'm not that good at playing. Miguel smiled. Me too. I only play for fun, not very good either. And just like that, the conversation flowed. We talked about our favorite teams, some recent games, and even joked about how terrible we both were at playing. The more I spoke, the more comfortable I felt. I made a few mistakes here and there, but no one seemed to notice, or if they did, they didn't care. It felt amazing to just be part of the conversation, to connect with people without worrying so much about being perfect. As the evening went on, I found myself laughing, talking, and even teasing Alex a little when he tried to teach Miguel how to pronounce some difficult English words. It was the first time in a long time that I felt like I could be myself without hiding behind silence. Later that night, as we walked home, Alex turned to me with a grin. See? That wasn't so bad, was it? I smiled. No, it wasn't. I actually had fun. Alex clapped me on the shoulder. Told you, man. You've just got to let go of the fear. From that point on, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. I was going to keep practicing, keep pushing myself, and keep speaking, no matter how many mistakes I made. I wanted to be able to express myself freely, in English and in everything else. I started taking more risks, not just with speaking English, but with other parts of my life too. I joined the school debate team, something I never would have dared to do before. At first, I was terrified. My first debate was a disaster. I stammered, lost my place, and barely managed to finish my points. But instead of giving up, I kept going. With every debate, I got a little better. I still made mistakes, but I learned from them, and that's what mattered. Outside of school, I practiced speaking with anyone I could. My teachers, classmates, even random people I met at the store. The more I spoke, the less I worried about being perfect, and the more confident I became. And something amazing happened. The more I stopped worrying about making mistakes, the more fluent I became. It was like my brain finally got the message. It's okay to mess up. The words started flowing more naturally, and my confidence grew with each conversation. But the best part? I stopped feeling like I was pretending to speak English. I felt like I was actually living the language, using it to connect with people and express who I was. One day, during a school assembly, something happened that I never would have imagined a few years earlier. The principal announced that they were looking for a student to represent the school in a national speech competition. As soon as I heard the announcement, my heart skipped a beat. This was it, the ultimate test. I turned to Alex, who was sitting next to me. Do you think I should try? Alex looked at me, his eyes wide with excitement. Dude, you have to try. You've come so far. I hesitated. A speech competition? In front of a huge audience? Could I really do it? But then I remembered everything I'd learned. About fear, about mistakes, and about pushing through. This was my chance to prove to myself that I could do anything if I put my mind to it. So I signed up. For the next few weeks, I practiced like crazy. I wrote my speech, memorized it, and practiced in front of anyone who would listen. My family, my friends, even my teachers. There were moments when I doubted myself, when the old fears crept back in. But every time I felt nervous, I reminded myself of all the progress I'd made. I wasn't the same boy who was too scared to speak up in class. I had found my voice. Finally, the day of the competition arrived. As I stood backstage, waiting for my turn, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and judges. My palms were sweaty, and for a brief moment, I wondered if I had made a huge mistake. But then, I saw Alex sitting in the audience, giving me a thumbs up. And I remembered why I was here. This wasn't just about winning a competition. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. When they called my name, I took a deep breath, walked onto the stage, and began my speech. At first, my voice was a little shaky, but as I spoke, I felt my confidence growing. I wasn't just reciting words. I was telling a story, sharing my journey, and letting my voice be heard. The more I spoke, the stronger I felt. When I finished, the audience erupted in applause. I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I had faced my fear and I had spoken in front of hundreds of people. As I walked off the stage, Alex was there, grinning from ear to ear. "You killed it, man. That was amazing." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride that I had never felt before. It wasn't just about the speech, it was about everything I had overcome to get here. And that, my dear friend, is how I found my voice. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but through practice, patience, and the support of a good friend, I learned that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to stumble, because every time you try, you get a little better. And eventually, you'll find that the words come more easily, and your voice grows stronger. After the speech competition, things changed for me in ways I didn't expect. It wasn't just that I felt more confident with English, but I started to feel different in general, like I could handle any challenge that came my way. Winning the competition was great. Yes, I actually won. But the real victory was internal. I had faced my fears and come out stronger. It was like a switch had flipped, and I wasn't the quiet, nervous kid anymore. I was Sam, the guy who could speak up, who wasn't afraid to make mistakes, and who could enjoy speaking English. The next few weeks at school were a blur of congratulations and new opportunities. Teachers who had once hesitated to call on me in class now asked for my input. My English teacher even invited me to help other students who were struggling with speaking. At first, I felt a bit awkward about it. Who was I to help someone else when I'd only just figured it out myself? But then I realized that helping others was part of the journey. If I could show someone else that it's okay to stumble, maybe they wouldn't feel so alone, just like Alex had done for me. One afternoon, my English teacher, Mr. Roberts, pulled me aside after class. "Sam, I've noticed how much you've improved over the past few months. You've come a long way, and I think you'd be a great mentor for some of the younger students who are still struggling with English." Mentor? Me? I was shocked at first. I had spent so much of my time avoiding speaking that the idea of helping others speak seemed surreal. But then I thought about how good it had felt to conquer my own fears, and how amazing it would be to help someone else do the same. "I'd love to help," I said, still processing the idea. Mr. Roberts smiled. "Great. I'll pair you with a few students and you can work with them during study hall. Just be yourself, Sam. You've got this." The next week, I started working with a small group of students, all of them around the same age I had been when I was struggling the most. There was Kunal, who barely spoke above a whisper, even though I could tell he understood everything. There was Sophia, who had a thick accent but an incredible vocabulary. And then there was Luis, who reminded me so much of myself it was almost uncanny. He was quick to nod along in class, but never spoke unless he absolutely had to. At first, they were shy, just like I had been. I saw them fidget, avoid eye contact, and give one-word answers. But instead of rushing them, I remembered how much it had meant when Alex had given me space to figure things out on my own. So I kept it casual. We'd talk about everyday things, music, sports, what they did over the weekend. I'd share stories about my own struggles, hoping they'd realize that everyone stumbles, especially in the beginning. Little by little, they started to open up. Kunal spoke in longer sentences, though still softly. Sophia's confidence grew, and she began to embrace her accent, no longer feeling the need to sound perfect. Luis. He reminded me the most of my own journey. He was quiet for the longest time, but one day, as we were talking about movies, he jumped in with his opinion about a film we'd all seen. His voice was a little shaky at first, but he kept going. I could see the same fear I had felt in his eyes, but as he finished speaking, I gave him a smile and a thumbs up, just like Alex had done for me all those months ago. See? That wasn't so bad, was it? I said, repeating Alex's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. Luis grinned, his face lighting up. No, it wasn't. Helping those students brought back so many memories of my own journey, and it made me realize just how far I had come. But it also reminded me that learning never stops. Just because I was more comfortable speaking now didn't mean I'd never face challenges again. In fact, there were still times when I hesitated, especially when speaking in front of new people or in more formal situations. But the difference was, now I knew how to push through that fear. One of the biggest challenges came not long after I started mentoring. Mr. Roberts approached me with an idea that made my heart race. Sam, there's an international student exchange program starting next year, he said one day after class. They're looking for students to host and help international students adjust to life here. I think you'd be perfect for it. At first, the idea of hosting a student from another country sounded exciting, but then the reality hit me. I would be responsible for helping them, guiding them, and most importantly, speaking a lot of English with them. What if I wasn't ready? What if I messed up? But before the fear could take hold, I thought back to everything I had learned. I had faced my fear of speaking English, and I had come out stronger. This was just another challenge, another opportunity to grow. I'll do it, I said, surprising even myself with how quickly I agreed. A few months later, I found out that the student I'd be hosting was a boy named Gabriel from Brazil. We started messaging each other online before he arrived, and I quickly realized that while his English was pretty good, he had the same hesitation I had once felt. He could understand most things, but when it came to speaking, he often second-guessed himself. When Gabriel finally arrived, I made it my mission to make him feel as comfortable as possible, just like Alex had done for me. We'd hang out after school, talking about everything from sports to music to food, and whenever he stumbled over a word or felt unsure, I'd remind him that it didn't matter if he made mistakes. What mattered was that he kept trying. One night, after we had been talking for hours about nothing in particular, Gabriel suddenly said, "You know, Sam, you've helped me a lot. I used to be really scared to speak English, but now I don't feel so scared anymore." I smiled, knowing exactly how he felt. "I get it," I said. "I was the same way, but the more you practice, the easier it gets. You're doing great." Gabriel grinned. "Thanks. It's still hard sometimes, but it's getting better." And that's when it hit me. Learning a language, learning anything really, is never just about one big moment of success. It's about all the little moments along the way. It's about the small victories, the times when you speak up even though you're scared, the times when you make a mistake but keep going anyway. It's about the journey. As the school year went on, I watched Gabriel grow more confident, just like I had. And in helping him, I continued to grow too. I realized that this journey of learning and speaking would never really be over. There would always be more to learn, more ways to improve, and more challenges to face. But now, instead of fearing those challenges, I welcomed them. And so, my dear friend, that's where my story continues. From being the boy who understood English but couldn't speak, to becoming someone who helps others find their voice. It's not always easy, and there are still times when I stumble over my words, when the fear creeps back in. But now I know that those moments don't define me. What defines me is how I keep moving forward, keep speaking up, and keep learning. As the year went on, Gabriel and I became close friends, much like how Alex and I had bonded before. Gabriel had his own set of challenges: new country, new culture, new everything. But seeing how he navigated through it all made me realize something profound. No one has it all figured out. Whether it's a new language or adjusting to a different life, everyone is just trying to learn, to adapt, to grow. One night, Gabriel and I were sitting outside, staring up at the stars, talking about our dreams and future plans. It was one of those calm moments where you feel safe to open up, and Gabriel shared something with me that reminded me of how far I had come. "You know, Sam," he said, his voice soft in the still night air. "When I first came here, I was terrified. I thought, I'll never fit in. I'll never be able to speak well enough. People will just laugh at me." I nodded, understanding every word he said because I had felt the exact same way not too long ago. "But then," he continued, "you made me feel like it was okay to try. Even when I messed up, you didn't laugh. You just helped me keep going. I don't know if I would have made it without that." His words hit me deep. I had never really thought of myself as someone who could help others, not in the way Alex had helped me. But hearing Gabriel say that, it made me realize that the journey I had been on wasn't just about learning English. It was about learning how to support others too, how to give back what I had been given. "That's what friends do," I said, feeling humbled. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying." Gabriel smiled, a smile that said more than words ever could. It was in those quiet, unspoken moments that I realized how much we had both grown. It wasn't just about fluency in English anymore. It was about finding your place, finding people who supported you, and most importantly, finding the courage to keep moving forward despite the fear. As time passed, I kept thinking about all the other people out there who were like me. People who could understand but couldn't speak. People who were trapped by their own fear of making mistakes. I had been lucky to have Alex by my side, and then Gabriel came into my life and reminded me of how important it was to pay it forward. So I decided to do something about it. One day, while sitting in my room, I came up with an idea. What if I could create a space for people like me? People who were struggling to speak English, who understood but couldn't find their voice. I wanted to build something that could help them the way Alex had helped me, the way I had helped Gabriel. I went to Mr. Roberts with my idea, feeling a bit nervous but also excited. "I want to start a speaking club," I said. "A place where students can come and practice speaking English without feeling judged. Somewhere they can make mistakes and learn from them. A space that's safe." Mr. Roberts looked at me, his face lighting up with approval. That's a brilliant idea, Sam. I think it could really make a difference. Let's talk about how we can get this started. And just like that, the Voice Club was born. At first, it was small, just a few students who I knew from my mentoring sessions. We would meet after school in one of the empty classrooms and talk. The rules were simple: no judgment, no laughing at mistakes, and most importantly, no pressure. It was a space to practice, to fail, to learn, and to grow. Word started to spread, and soon more students joined. Kunal, Sophia, and Luis were regulars, and Gabriel, of course, was there too. Each week, more students would walk through the door, some shy, some eager, but all with one goal in mind: to find their voice. One day, a girl named Rena joined. She had just moved from India and barely spoke in class. When she did, it was in a whisper so soft you could barely hear her. She reminded me of myself on that first day, sitting in the back of the room, hoping no one would call on me. After a few sessions, Rena slowly started to open up. At first, she only said a few words here and there, but with each meeting, she grew bolder. One afternoon, as we were talking about our favorite books, Rena suddenly began to speak. Her voice was still soft, but there was confidence there now, a confidence that hadn't been there before. "I really like mystery novels," she said, her words careful but clear. "They help me think about things in a different way." Everyone in the room listened intently, nodding along, and for the first time, I saw Rena smile. A real, genuine smile. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "Thank you, Sam," she said, her eyes bright. "I never thought I'd be able to talk like that in English. But here, it feels safe." Her words brought a lump to my throat. This was why I had started the club. This was what it was all about: giving people the space to be themselves, to speak without fear. As the Voice Club grew, so did I. It wasn't just about speaking English anymore. It was about creating a community, about supporting each other through our struggles. Each person who joined had their own story, their own fears and insecurities, but together, we found strength. Together, we learned that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being brave enough to try. One day, during one of our meetings, Alex stopped by to see how things were going. He sat in the back, listening as students shared their thoughts, their struggles, their victories. After the meeting ended, he came up to me with a grin. "You've really built something here, man," he said, giving me a playful shove. "This is amazing." I shrugged, feeling a bit bashful. "I just wanted to help, like you helped me." Alex nodded, his face softening. "You've done more than help, Sam. You've given people a place to belong. That's huge." And in that moment, I realized that Alex was right. The Voice Club wasn't just a space to practice English. It had become a family, a place where we all could grow, stumble, and learn together. As I looked around the room at the faces of my friends, my peers, I felt a deep sense of pride. Not just in myself, but in all of us. We had come so far. We had faced our fears, made mistakes, and kept going anyway. And that, my dear friend, is where my story continues. It's not just my story anymore. It's the story of all of us. The ones who understand but struggle to speak, the ones who are learning to find their voice, and the ones who help others find theirs. So if you're ever feeling like you understand but can't speak, remember this: it's not about being perfect. It's about trying. It's about surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, who remind you that it's okay to make mistakes, and who believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. Some tips and tricks to help you if you find yourself in a situation where you understand English but struggle to speak it confidently. 1. Start small and build up. Begin by speaking in comfortable, low-pressure environments, maybe with friends, family, or even yourself in front of a mirror. Start with short sentences and simple words. Don't rush into long conversations. Every small step counts. 2. Practice. Out loud. Even if you're just reading a book or watching a movie, try saying the words out loud. It helps train your mouth to form the words and your brain to get used to speaking in English. Record yourself speaking and play it back. You'll notice areas where you can improve, but you'll also hear your progress. 3. Embrace mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. It's more important to try and communicate than to worry about being perfect. Remember, everyone makes errors, even native speakers. 4. Use what you know. Don't feel like you need to know every word or phrase. Use the vocabulary you already have to express yourself. If you don't know a specific word, try explaining it in a different way, or use gestures. The goal is communication, not perfection. 5. Learn. Phrases, not just words. Focus on learning useful phrases or expressions rather than individual words. This way, you'll have ready-made sentences you can use in different situations. For example, phrases like, "Could you help me?" or "I don't understand" will be useful in many conversations. 6. Shadowing technique. Listen to English speakers and repeat what they say immediately, copying their intonation, speed, and rhythm. This technique, called shadowing, helps improve pronunciation and fluency. 7. Join conversation groups or clubs. Find a language exchange or conversation group, either in person or online. These are safe spaces where everyone is learning and you can practice speaking in a relaxed environment. Try creating or joining a group like the Voice Club, where there's no judgment, and the focus is on learning together. 8. Think in English instead of translating from your native language. Try to think in English. It's challenging at first, but over time it helps speed up your ability to speak without hesitation. When you're alone, narrate your actions in English, such as, "I'm making breakfast," or "I need to buy groceries." This gets you used to forming sentences quickly. 9. Use English in your daily life. Change your phone settings to English, listen to English music, watch English movies with subtitles, and read English books or articles. Surround yourself with the language to get more comfortable with it. 10. Focus on listening. Listening to native speakers regularly helps improve your understanding of natural speech patterns, slang, and pronunciation. Podcasts, movies, and music are great tools for getting used to the way English is spoken in real-life situations. 11. Take deep breaths. If you feel nervous before speaking, take a deep breath to calm yourself down. Speak slowly and clearly, and remember, most people are patient and willing to help you if they see you're trying. 12th. Set small, achievable goals. Don't overwhelm yourself by expecting to be fluent overnight. Set small goals like saying one sentence to a stranger or answering a question in class. Each small success will build your confidence. 13. Reward yourself. Celebrate your progress. Whether it's successfully ordering food at a restaurant or having your first full conversation in English, reward yourself for each milestone you reach. It'll motivate you to keep going. 14. Don't compare yourself to others. Everyone learns at their own pace, so don't worry if someone else seems to be improving faster than you. Focus on your own progress and celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they seem. 15. Have fun with it. Learning English doesn't have to be stressful. Play games, sing along to songs, or even write short stories in English. When you're having fun, you'll learn more quickly and easily.